be reading from Airship Hunters, which I've described numerous times already, so you know what it's like. And Fighting Alaska, right?
Yeah.
Jack Tunney. The series, it's credited to Jack Tunney. Afterwards, there is a panel of new Fictioneer, new pulp writers going to talk about the influence of Lovecraft on their writing, Lovecraft and Weird Tales on their writing. A little bit later, presentation on Lee Brown Coy, and then we end up the afternoon by Scott Urban, prose and poetry, weird prose and poetry. All right, this guy in the tie-dye shirt, you get to pick one of these Chaosium books.
Nice.
As you were actually sitting back there when I did the random number selection, so I still give it to you. All right, thank you. We'll have the rest of them at each presentation this afternoon, so here's Duane.
Thank you.
I don't know if I can do it.
Before you go, I want to say, this will be the second one of these I've ever done. I did one back at the Ramada years ago. But any of these writers that are here, this is a great opportunity for us, and we thank you and the committee for the opportunity. And it's a good opportunity for these folks because they say, that's kind of interesting. I think I would buy that. Or, man, that sucks. I'm staying away. That's not going home with me. So, thank you, Mike. I appreciate it greatly. Do I need this? Do I need that? Okay. Back there? I couldn't talk and sign books yesterday at the same time. I don't know that I can hold this and read.
Just click the
Okay.
table.
All right. If you can't hear me, wait.
You got a copy of the book there to show?
I don't.
Anybody got theirs real quick?
I might. Hold on.
Audio visual. It's all about the words. Thank you. What it's about, all right, here's the Airship Hunters. It's from Meteor House.
Yes.
Premiering here at PulpFest premiere. And limited edition, signed copies, and you personalize them. And there is a Meteor House table, and Jim and I are sharing a table. Jim Beard and I.
What time do you want to hide them?
1:15.
Got it.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. So, thanks for coming. I am going to start with something from Airship Hunters. And the premise is, Jim describes it as the X-Files in 1897. And that's sort of correct. It's actually based on actual occurrences of sightings of, they weren't called UFOs at the time, but there were actual sightings of things in the air in 1897 around Sacramento and other places in the West and Southwest, and for about 2 years, 1896, 1897, and then disappeared. And there's various theories. In fact, if you've ever watched the television show Ancient Aliens, they talk about these things too. So we use that as our jumping off point to extrapolate what's really behind those events. And so anyway, there's two agents who are sort of thrown together. One is a military guy in the Army. His name is Valiantine. And the other is a U.S. Treasury agent, Cabot. And they're sort of put together by their Superior War Department and the Treasury Department. Is that these sightings are going on. The president's a little concerned that there's some something going on, because we're leading into that period that's leading up to the Spanish-American War, and so they're thinking, we don't know if this is some sort of subversive activity within the country or something external threat that is, we just want to find out. So they send them out on these investigations, and weird things happen. Okay, so it comes to a point where the two agents, and they become known, they are assigned, okay, you're sort of, this is all hush-hush, but you are now aero marshals investigating the aeronautical mysteries. And if you purchase a copy, at the show you get a little aero marshal pin, and you too can be an aero marshal. Okay? So, these investigations go along, and like in X-Files, they begin to wonder if there's something going on that their superiors aren't telling them. So, at this point, Cabot and Valentin decide to travel back to Washington and just do a little investigating there. So they it's at night, they've broken into the Treasury building. So Cabot stopped before one of the heavy doors that interrupted the undecorated walls every several yards. He unlocked it using a key from his vest pocket. He entered the anteroom of Gallows' office. Executive Director Gallows is his superiors. Cabot took note of the desks where Jack Burnley, James Turner, and James Barnes had been busy the day he had left for Kansas. All sat in a line, and the top of each was clear of all papers and files. The door at the other side of the room blocked the way to Gallows' office. Valentin directed light on the ornate knob and lock. Cabot tried the knob. He shrugged and pulled the leather wallet from his jacket pocket. This came from Sebastian Coons, my Louisville gunsmith. He's quite the craftsman. He's been awarded 3 or 4 patents for his inventions. Unfolded, the wallet revealed a number of key-shaped implements. Cabot plucked one after the other and tried each in the door's keyhole. Finally, he turned one of them with a satisfying plunk. The two agents shared a look. Cabot turned the knob and entered. Valentin made the light dark around the office. What are we looking for? He followed his partner deeper into the room. I'm not sure yet. Cabot went behind Gallows' large desk. He relied on his wallet of implements again, working on the locked desk drawers. As he succeeded in unlocking each, he would open it and search its contents. No papers in here that mention anything we've been up to. Nothing that names Wellington or Scarborough. Those are 2 other government guys. Valentin turned the light onto a large black safe that sat against the back wall of the room. Is that next? I suppose so. The two approached a squat iron beast. No keyhole, Valentin said. We've run out of luck here. Not necessarily. Cabot tucked the wallet back into his pocket. He hunkered down in front of the safe stool. Let me get the dial set to 0, then turn the lamp away. Dark will help me concentrate on my hearing. On your hearing? I'll have my ear to the door listening for tumblers falling. Valentin turned the lamp away from the safe. You are full of surprising talents. As a police detective, one is in the company of an array of incorrigible people with a remarkable list of skills. One learns where and when one can. He put his ear to the metal door. As a treasury agent, the skills one hones are more narrowly focused because of the types of crimes one encounters, but the varieties are just as extraordinary. No doubt. Now shush. Cabot tried not to strain to hear anything within the door's works. That might lead to hearing false snicks or clicks that would only cause his efforts to take longer. He closed his eyes and took a deep breath, then exhaled slowly. Relax, he thought. Darken the mind like this room. Listen. Just listen. Don't strain for what's not there. Caress the lock, and she will give up her whispers and giggles. He put his fingers on the dial. Lightly, lightly, he reminded himself. We're here in the dark, the 2 of us, alone, quiet, and tender. Cabot began to turn the dial gently, slowly. Savor the tactile delights, the slight resistance of the turning, the whisper of its well-oiled glide, the press of the door's face against the cheek, and the rising warmth there. Delicate, so delicate. Tell me your secrets, my dear. Crick. How sweet, how modest. Cabot began to turn the dial the opposite direction. Careful, sir, no need to rush. Slow the breathing. Consider, no relish the moment, the now, not the prize that awaits. Cabot continued his silent efforts. He lost track of time, living only for the instants when the tumbler spoke to him. Any sense of Valentin's presence faded from his awareness. He turned the dial and listened until clack. Oh my dear. Cabot took his fingers from the dial and grasped the door handle. He turned the latch. Funk. Ah, the light, please. Valentin quickly complied. The yellow gleamed. Cabot stood before the open door of the safe. Cabot, that's amazing. Perhaps, primarily it's very tiring. Take a look in there, will you, while I catch my breath. Valentin stepped forward as Cabot stepped back. Really, I am very impressed. How did you do that? I had a good teacher, Cabot said. He said, think of the safe as if it is a woman. You must be patient and gentle and kind, especially patient. And then she will be yours. What do you find? In currency, it'll take your eye instead of mine to determine whether it's genuine or fake. Papers, but nothing about our investigations, and I don't see Wellington or Scarborough's name on anything here. Nothing else? Cabot's spirits have slump. A velvet bag, here. Did you say Gallows put the coin in a wooden box? Yes. Then here we may be. Valentin drew 3 wooden boxes from a black drawstring bag and arranged them on Gallows' desk. In a snap, they were open, and the lamp shone on the coin within each. Cabot caught his breath. That's them. Not all, I think, but perhaps he doesn't have them all. He bent closer to examine the coin's details. It's odd, he said. What's that? I can't tell which is the one I found in Kansas. Maybe none is. But they all seem far more worn than the ones I've seen so far. The same type of coin as the ones you've seen? Oh, yes, and I can just make out the dates. Again, they're the same age as the ones I had in my hands, but they look so much older and worn down. Cabot reached out and touched the dull surface of one of the coins. My Gadfrey! What? Look, just my touch seems to have smudged the raised surface of the coin. It's marred the design. And here, my fingertip, it's shiny as though the metal was turning to dust and lifted from the money onto my skin. Is it really gold? Yes, I swear it is. But the coin seems to be, I'm not sure, decaying. I've never seen anything like this before. Do you suppose they are, it sounds completely fantastic, even to me as I say it, turning into slugs like the others that are found by the police? I suppose it's possible. We certainly have reached the point where fantastic means something different now than it did several weeks ago. I thought someone had stolen the other coins, replaced them with slugs. Perhaps one faction stealing from the other, or the original owners attempting to steal back clues they had accidentally left behind. But one metal degrading into another like that seems rather unlikely. Valentin tapped the finger against Cabot's shoulder. Diamonds come from coal, I hear, but that requires geological time. These coins have only been around a few weeks. Certainly it's beyond my understanding. What's next? Cabot closed the boxes and handed one to Valentin. Take this one, I'll take the others. He put a box in each of his jacket pockets. Return the bag to the safe. Then we'll close her up and be on our way. But what will we do with them? How do we help us? We still don't know anything further about the plot, if there is one. What our superiors have to do with any of this, I don't know, Cabot said. But perhaps we can use the coins as some sort of leverage. Find out what's going on. But there's nothing else here that can be used. Let's clean up and leave. As they swept the room for signs of their entry and search, Valentin said, Cabot, I want to say, I'm sorry about that outburst on the train. You've been through a great strain. Forget it. But you can't. It'll be there always. Cabot he's a treasury agent. He deals with currency, but he had to kill somebody in the course of one of their investigations. It'll be there always. I'm a military man. I've experienced terrible battles, seen men do horrific things to other men. They come back when I least expect, waiting for my eyes to close, for a relaxing moment in the sun, a drowsy afternoon while I'm gazing at leaves moving in a breeze. They were standing by the door. I'm sorry, my friend. Cabot nodded, then he gestured toward the door. Let's go. He locked Gallows' office door behind them and did the same to the anteroom door. Two retraced their steps along the hall to the door at the top of the stairway. They paused to listen for sounds of any other movements before descending. Over the rail, to the door, Valentine doused the lamp. Cabot cracked open the door. He opened it a bit farther. Clear. Two men slipped out the door and were down the steps and heading back for the trees in moments. A voice stopped them in their tracks. "Gentlemen, I am surprised to see you remaining so diligent about your duties, even when you have been suspended from them." It was Gallows' voice. The aero marshals turned. Gallows and another figure were approaching from the shadows at the near corner of the building. The second spoke. "I told you, sir. I saw Cabot on Burnley's porch. Then I followed him here. I kept an eye out for him, just as you asked." "Yes, you did very well, Mr. Turner." Cabot's flight reflex was pushed aside by a sudden fury. "Rufus, you son of a bitch, you preening bastard. Get out of this. Get out of here now." Gallows stopped a few feet away. "Mr. Cabot, that is hardly the professional demeanor I would have expected from you, particularly towards coffee." Turner stood a couple of feet behind and to the left of Gallows. Light from a distant lamp gave his sandy hair the look of brown smoke. A timid smile twitched across his lips. Gallows said, "I am not sure what you are about, but it is just as well you are here." Valentine whispered, "Cabot, a wise retreat is in order." Cabot was tired of running from his anger, his fears, the mysteries that whirled just out of reach. He refused to listen to the lieutenant's counsel. "What's going on here, Director? We're not sure what you're about either." "You're very bold, Cabot," Turner taunted. Cabot released his venom. "As are you, Rufus, behind another man's skirts." Gallows cut it. "My goodness, Mr. Cabot, your time in the frontier has done you no good, Turner." Cabot felt the leash to his anger fall away. He leapt upon Gallows boldly, a growl rolling from his throat. The older man fell back, Cabot upon him. Turner squawked and danced backward as Cabot pummeled Gallows' face and body with all his might. His fury fused with his frustration and powered his fists as he thumped his former superior. Gallows did not cry out, but grunted and groaned as he was thrashed. Valentine had dropped the lamp and clawed at Cabot's shoulders, trying to pull his partner off the older man. But the younger agent's rage kept him wiggling from the lieutenant's grasp, and he continued to pound Gallows' face, ribs, and chest. Finally, Cabot began to tire, and Valentine succeeded in untangling his partner from atop the house. He got Cabot to his feet. The younger agent's chest heaved. He looked down at Gallows, and his sight seemed to clear. The man's face was a bloody mess. The director groaned a long, rolling moan like someone trying to wake from a nightmare. Turner stood a yard away, his feet moving here and there, clearly unsure whether he should help Gallows or flee. Cabot heard Valentine's voice in his ear. He wasn't fighting back. He wanted to keep us here. It was a delaying action. We must leave now. Cabot wheezed. Valentine turned him around and got his partner stumbling toward the deeper shadows under the trees. Then the shadows moved. The trunks of the trees seemed to walk toward the two agents. The darkness separated, and the moving figures were men in uniform. "It's them," Cabot said. They wore uniforms like those of the first victim they had found in Louisville. There were at least 20 of them, all armed with rifles. Cabot turned to the left, Valentine to the right. More of them were appearing from the shadows. The two agents were ringed in. Cabot shook his head, still angry, but now exhausted. "I'm sorry, Valentine. I'm very sorry." The guards halted. In their circle were the aero marshals and Turner. The latter spoke up. "What is all this? Who are these men?" Two more figures advanced at a stately pace from under the trees. They took their place in the circle of soldiers. Wellington and the third man the agents had seen getting off the train in Luray. The latter gestured, and one of the soldiers fired. The sound was a shock to Cabot's nerves, and his knees nearly gave way. But the greater surprise was seeing Turner collapse to the ground like a dropped bag of grain. So that's that. All right. Hopefully that whets your appetite for more. Like I said, get an Arrows Marshall's pen, and you'll be in on the secret too. All right, the next thing is from Fighting Alaska. And Fighting Alaska is part of the Fight Card series that Paul Bishop and Mel Odom have launched. And there's a variety of people writing those. And nearly monthly. So mine's been out as a Kindle book for a couple, 3 months, but the paperback version is having its premiere here at PulpFest. So they're at the table that I'm showing you here. So most of I don't know if you're familiar with the premise behind the fight card series. Most of them are sort of hark back to the boxing pulps and the boxing stories that were in hard-boiled magazines, the digest in the 50s. So a lot of them started out, they were set in the 40s, 50s, maybe the 60s. My proposal to Paul was that he said, hey, that's kind of cool, go ahead and do that, is that Fighting Alaska is set in 1900. And I have a bare knuckle boxer, itinerant boxer, he travels around, named, what is his name? Jean St. Vrain, okay. And so he's been doing this for 10 years. He's ready to get out of this, doing the boxing. He's had enough. He says, I'm getting too old for this. It's not going to be a good deal. So during the course of the novel, he and his buddy says, I've got this deal. We can get out of this boxing thing. We can get rich. He's like, how? I said, it's a gold rush in Alaska. We're going up there. I bought a claim. Just pluck the nuggets out of the ground, and then we'll be set. We can quit the boxing thing. What happens is they get up to Alaska, and there are complications. In real life history, Wyatt Earp and a variety of folks were up there established. Wyatt Earp had a couple of saloons, ran in Nome, Alaska. And so they meet Wyatt Earp in the story. Rex Beach, anybody know Rex Beach? Author. He wrote The Spoilers and some other novels that were turned into John Wayne and Randolph Scott movies, North Alaska, and I think there was The Spoilers was actually one. Tex Rickard, who, anybody know him?
I've heard the name.
He built the third incarnation of Madison Square Garden. He was a boxing promoter. He promoted Jack Dempsey's fights. He was involved with the big Jack Johnson fight and the battle against the Great White Hope. And he founded the New York Rangers, the hockey team. So he was up there, made 5 or 6 fortunes and lost them, and then kept enough money together, came down back to the continental United States and started the country. So all these guys are up there, and they're encountered in the course of the book. And what was an actual happening in Nome, Alaska, and is actually the plot for The Spoilers, is a federal judge came in and jumped the claims, all the claims, and said, he used the power of the law. He says, I'm a federal judge. There's too much chaos here. There's too much claim jumping going on. I'm taking them all over, and we're going to settle it. What he was really doing was working the claims and taking all the money. So this was a big scandal, and that's sort of the basic plot of The Spoilers, and it fits into here as well, because their claim is jumped by the federal judge, among others. And what's interesting is claims eventually were kind of sorted out a few years later. The judge was never disbarred. I think he paid a fine. The judge. So it's one of those things. But at this point, John, and during the course of the novel, they also meet another fellow. Anybody ever watch Have Gun Will Travel? Paladin shows up. He's never named because you can get into some copyright, but he does show up in the course of the book. All right. So this is earlier on, near the beginning of the story. John is just had a fight in a small town to get his money together so he can go to San Francisco and meet his buddy, because he doesn't yet know about the The fight took place in a tent whose size would make a Sunday camp preacher's eyes roll with the sin of envy. The canvas never saw a revival. It stood behind the Ajax Emporium, which served up masculine entertainments laced with alcohol and gambling. John had arranged the fight with the Emporium's owner, Bernard Kruger, who took the name Ajax when he purchased the saloon 5 years back. Ajax had become an old hand at setting up diversions for his customers, and purchasing and erecting the tent 2 months earlier, it turned out to be a sound business move. Ajax knew the kid had a hankering to prove himself, so he recruited Jean's opponent and an off-duty town constable to serve as the new fighter's cornerman and manager. Although popular, fights were considered illegal in many communities. Such events were therefore touted as scientific exhibitions. Having a local constable involved added legitimacy to the promoter's claims. John hardly knew anyone in town, and Ajax didn't want to be seen supporting the local boy's opponent, so the barman recommended Burl Evans, a farrier from down the street, to be in John's corner. So Burl had helped the wearied John maneuver through the noisy throng after the fight, and out of the tent, and into an upstairs back room inside the Emporium. John didn't follow much that had happened after that. Eventually he woke up. He lay on a cot. His arms hung off the sides. His hands were drowned in the water of melted ice in 2 buckets, one standing on the floor to his left, the other on his right. He let his hands stay in the water. He ate so much he winced and had to hold back a groan if he shifted on the cot. He recalled after a time how Burl had helped him undress, helped him wash up, and rubbed down his beaten body. The farrier had good hands, and if he treated horse flesh as well as he did a thumped human form, John figured the man had a lot of happy customers. John realized he drifted back to sleep when he opened his eyes and saw Billy Basham looking down at him. "Guess I'm lazing away the day," John said. Billy grinned. "Johnny, my friend, let me be honest. No matter how much beauty sleep you get, it ain't gonna help. Thanks for setting me straight. That kid you whooped is already out and about. He's still too young and stupid to know he needs beauty sleep. But he has local yokels patting his back for the good showing. From the look of things last night, I'd say that mostly that's thanks to you." John offered no answer, so Billy continued. "He's sold up like a possum, though, like he deserves something. But as I said, he's young and stupid. He might turn into a good fighter. With some training and discipline, yes, I've seen it happen. But we won't be waiting around for that day." John nodded. He measured his aches as he did so. "How'd we do?" "Very well," Billy said, and he patted his paunch. John knew that under the vest and shirt, Billy wore a stuffed belt with money. His personal stash, plus their winnings from last night's bout. Billy had been John's man in the crowd, making timely side wagers during the fight. Each depended on the other's performance to make John's pains and bruises profitable. "Very well," Billy repeated. "That kid had a lot of believers under the tent. I guess he's shown some promise against some neighbors, but we made enough for Ajax to have his cut, the constable, the cornerman, and our split. And mine, you can get to San Francisco and even eat and sleep on the way." Billy began to shuck his jacket. "Sure it's okay to pay me out here and now? That farrier, Evans, he's doing a fine job guarding your door to make sure no disgruntled boosters of the kid's debatable talents come a-calling. Good man." Billy unbuttoned his vest. "I have your share. Put it in the bank. Give me the receipt. I'll draw it out when I make my travel plans. You don't want to see it? I can't use it here." Billy shrugged into his jacket. A knock from the door prompted John to say, "Come on in." Burl Evans entered. He carried a platter, and when he pulled away the covering towel, John saw it was loaded with a thick steak, roasted potatoes, greens, and Crowder beef. Boxer quickly realized his belly felt like a winter wolf's, and he ignored the dazzles of pain as he struggled up from the cot. While he sat down at a small table on which Burl had arranged the meal, the farrier left the room and fetched back from the hallway a basket of cornbread and a pail of cold beer. "Rather have coffee?" John grinned. "I'll make it." He tucked into the meal and nodded to Burl. "This is grand." Burl lifted a hand in acknowledgement, then exited into the hallway and pulled the door shut behind him. Billy pinched off a piece of cornbread and nibbled. "We can make some fair money with a rematch." John narrowed an eye at him. "That was not a battle of equals. You said so yourself." "Did I? Listen, go back to Faraday, back to bouncing drunks and lunkheads from that bar you were at. Give it a few months. I send word back here, stir up interest in a grudge match. The kid gets a chance to show what he really can do. We pull home more money than this time because there'll be history and bad feelings. More money than we can tote." John waved away the proposal with his fork. "I busted his ribs. His hand will hurt him a while. He'll think twice before he wants to face me." He's a young stallion, got the strut for the crowd, for the gals. The locals know his name, put up money for that name, and he has to earn back their respect for that name, even if they're patting his back today. Billy tapped his forehead. It's all up here in the skull. That's what makes him want to fight. He'll put himself up to anything if he can reclaim the glory he imagines he deserves. John looked down at his plate while he sawed at the steak and loaded his fork. I told you before we did all this, Billy. I'm done. He shook his head, not raising his gaze. I fit the fight. What's that? John's chewing slowed. He laid down the fork and the plate sounded a little ring. I saw a fight once. I bet you see more than one. John didn't even nod, just continued talking. It was two freedmen, flogging scars all across their backs, both of them. Must have been young when they picked those up. John ignored the interruption. You know how these affairs usually go. A battle royale in a private club, or some big shot's home, or a big band put up against a smaller one to create a violent comedy that jollies up the crowd for the main bout. Put everyone in a good mood so they'll let loose more of their money. Billy nodded. A smiling man will wager his pay. A frowning man stays away. You've seen it. So this fight equals two big men, big and angry looking, both of them, made more fearsome looking by those scars on their backs. A great spectacle for the crowd. John frowned at Billy. Great spectacle, yes. The fight? It was brutal. The bout played through Jean's memory. He'd watched among the yelling spectators. You actually flinched more than once as though struck by some of the blows he witnessed. John saw something in those fighters' faces that nearly frightened him, light flashing across clenched expressions like lightning and roiling thunder hits, reflecting a wretched anger and a desire to strip away one's own pain by flaying it from another man's body. Every unspoken angry word, every ounce of hate for every moment of pain and loss, fueled each swing that slammed the fist into an opponent's sweat-slicked body. The same was true for the man who hit and for the one who hit back. An hour afterwards, another bout was in progress. Jean had wandered, found his way to a stable 3 blocks away. A lamp was lit by the open door, but no hostler was present. John heard muttering from a dark stall near the back of the cavernous structure. John had picked up the lamp and gone to the stall. Its floor was strewn with straw. A pail of water sat nestled there at the back near a narrow bench. There sat one of the Negro battlers. His scarred back leaned against the wall. His legs were stretched out before him. A rope of bloody snot hung from his nose to his chin, and his eyes were swollen shut. His arms hung limp, his curled hands useless between his thighs. This stall would be his bed for the night. The man's mouth continued to move. Bloody bubbles rose and popped at one corner of his beaten lips. Jean had listened to the muttering. Fit to fight. I fit to fight. It been fit. I've been fit. Fight no more. No more fight. Jean had backed out of the stall and left. He'd watched no more fights that night. He looked up at Billy Basham, who nodded. John sighed. 2 weeks later, I saw him across the street, still staggering around. His face looked like a mule kick. The rest of him didn't look so good either. A month later, I saw him fighting again. I didn't stick around for the whole fight. I didn't want to see him after. John stared at Billy. I don't care to end up in a horse stall, leaving bloody hay behind me the next morning. I never met another knucklebuster who talked or thought the way you do, John, Billy said. But no one wants to end his days in a horse stall, Johnny. John picked up his fork. His fingers and knuckles hurt. His hands were stiff. I'm going to finish this fine meal, then I'm heading back to bed. Billy nodded acceptance, started for the door. I'll go to the bar. John gazed at his plate, at the red juices puddled around the remains of his steak, at the fork that slowly slipped from his fingers and clattered to the floor. So it's out. 5 after. Okay, I've got 10 minutes. Okay. So those are both available, and then there's another thing I've been working on that I hope to have done by Christmas. And if not, then I hope to have it here next year. But It's called Space Detective, and this is the longest thing I've ever worked on. Not lengthwise, just time-wise. Because I read from it at that reading at the Ramada several years ago, so I'm kind of slow. But this is called Space Detective. And does anybody know Mike Files or his work? He does covers for a lot of the books out here you'll see on the tables at the dealer's room. So Mike is an artist, and I was looking at his portfolio page on the, and he has all kinds of different examples. So he has these pictures of his characters. I didn't have a name, but he's in a suit, and he's got a helmet on. And I just was kind of inspired. I wrote like a chapter of a fake story about space detective. I sent to Mike and said, "Hey, thanks for letting me look at your stuff. This is great. This was inspired." He said, "I like that. Do more." So slowly there's this novel coming out, and the premise behind Space Detective is there's this guy, Space Detective, who works as a private eye in what is essentially 1950s Manhattan. However, it's not the Manhattan of our world. It is an alternate universe Manhattan where there was not a winner of World War II. It just kept dragging on, and there was a truce. So that euphoria and sense of confidence that was across the culture in the 50s isn't there. It's more like, it's kind of a little more repressed feeling. Everything's kind of, there's a little, the confidence isn't there. So New York's not known as New York. Its name is New Angoulême. The Hudson River is actually called the Mohican River, and there's a lot more names are tied to some of its history. The police force is full of not only Irish but Mohawks and Vikings, because the Christian Vikings were run out of Norway and Iceland, and they settled in the New World, and the Mohawks and the Vikings didn't get along very well. And so there's some cultural history there too. So, but Space Detective, the backstory is, it's not normally known. He's a private eye, and there's Detective and Chief Inspector Uncas doesn't really trust Space Detective. He says, "What's your real gig? I know you're a private eye, but I just didn't have a good feeling." But they're sort of uneasy allies, sort of like Batman and Commissioner Gordon. But his real backstory is as you go through the story, he represents this interplanetary network of, I don't know, they're sort of like the Green Lanterns or the Lensmen, only they don't have powers like that necessarily. So he is posted on Earth to kind of keep alien invasions or incursions at bay and prevent those from happening. But he doesn't let anybody know that. He also has this sort of telepathic link with his assistant, who doesn't have a name, but he's from Pluto, and he lives in a jar of dry ice. And he's sort of his Gal Friday, only, as he points out more than once, I'm your leg man, but I don't have legs. So he gets things done for it. So at this point, let me see where we start.
Yeah, about 5 minutes.
Okay, all right. So this one has a connection with Pulse. So I would read this section. Because these juvenile delinquent gangs are running all over town, being super destructive, and they're bleeding. The source, they think, of all this destruction and this vandalism and juvenile delinquency are comic books, right? All these lurid crime comics. So they're investigating this because he thinks it's something else at the root. The door they had entered earlier in the day was locked. The core belt? No, that's right. That's not it. Where's my man? Oh, here it is. Sorry. The detective stepped out of the elevator into a wide reception area that appeared nearly bare. There was a desk facing the elevator, 3 straight chairs, and an oriental rug on the floor. What once may have been an opulent display of wood detailing had been obscured, but the paneling and trim had all been painted off white. The paint was chipped here and there. 3 frames hung on the wall behind the desk. Each displayed the lurid cover art for one of Grimson's increasingly infamous comics. And Eric Grimson is the publisher of this line of comics. A young woman with a wave in her dark hair and a flash in her brown eyes looked up from papers arrayed on the desk. The ends of a silver chain around her neck were connected to the earpieces of a pair of black framed glasses that rode the crest of her sweater bosom. You have an appointment? Are you Mr. Grimson's secretary? The detective had a smile in his voice. Nope, I'm the copy editor, and I answer questions from guys who don't have appointments and who don't answer my questions. The retort had sharp little edges, but she smiled. I've seen your picture. Interested in having a monthly book on the newsstand? Not exactly, but I'd like to see Mr. Grimson. I'm Hazel. She stood and smiled at the detective. Placed on the desk the short stack of typed papers she'd been reading when interrupted. She stuck out a hand, shook the detective's gloved hand. The detective started to reply, but she cut him off. I said I'd seen your picture. You ever take that thing off? No. She walked to a door in the wall behind the desk. Come on back. Eric is just reading. He probably needs an interruption. You may not know it, but he probably does. The detective followed Hazel along a hall to an office that had no door. The hinges were in place, but no door was hung there. Go on in, Hazel said, and stood beside as the detective entered. The office walls were lined with bookcases, all of them filled to overflowing. Waist-high stacks of books and magazines and funny books stood on the floor, leaning like houses of cards ready to tumble. In front of one wall of shelves was arranged a magazine rack. It was stuffed with the bright colors of the latest funny books, both Grimson's and those of his competitors. There was no desk, but a long table was arranged in the middle of the room. Its surface was covered with a jumble of funny books, most of them open to the interior pages. Sitting behind this table, perusing a magazine about talking dogs and cats, was a bookish fellow. Yes, I said bookish. With wavy black hair and thick glasses. He wore a blue bow tie and a starched white shirt whose sleeves were rolled up above his elbows. Hazel was gone. The reading man didn't look up. The detective spoke. Mr. Grimson? Aye? He continued to read. His fingers caressed the paper before flipping to the next page. Excuse me. Grimson finally looked up, a dazed, unfocused appearance at his eyes behind the corrective lenses. Oh, hey, I know you, Mr. Space Detective. He stood and extended a hand. His fingers were smudged black as though he'd had his prints taken. They shook. The detective said, I'm sorry to come by without an appointment. Hey, no problem. Grimson waved it away. He sat down again. If Hazel didn't want you back here, you'd not be seeing me now. The detective paused and looked around. Is the building shaking? Ah, it's okay. It's the presses downstairs, running the books. I sit down, the presses roll. It's like a massage. Here, have a seat. He looked around, books everywhere. Okay, I don't have another chair. He looked at the detective and smiled, made no effort to go get a chair or to suggest a direction to look one. That's okay. You're here about the book, right? Grimson interrupted. What book? That Space Detective book, right? His lips puckered and his thick brows gathered above his nose. We're doing a Space Detective book, right? The detective put the smile into his voice. Not that I know of, but I hear rumors that people want to do one. Maybe I do. You should meet my artist. I bet Hazel would write it. She would probably want to write it. She's been bugging me to let her write a book. She must like you. She let you back here. She says she's tired of editing, wants to write. His attention had seemed to wander somewhere while he talked. Now he looked at the detective again. Would that be okay? Hazel writing your book? You might ask Hazel first. Grimson cocked his head. Is there a space girl back at your office? No. There's the plutonium. Maybe it's time to advertise for some feminine help. Because this is like the third time in the course of the story. Someone said, hey, is there a space girl? You want to do a book? That's okay. Hazel might get jealous if she had to write in a space girl. Right. Mr. Grimson, please, Eric is fine. He waved his hand again. Mr. Grimson is my father. He started this business, publishing dime novels, then the detective and Western magazines. He bent and rummaged in a pile by a corner. The tower of magazines toppled. And Grimson raised and waved a pulp paper magazine with a bright colored cover featuring big splashes of red and yellow. Top Hat Mystery. The cover painting captured an action-packed scene. A man with a desperate expression, his clothes in rags, held a knife to the throat of a respectable-looking young woman who bit her lips in fear. The man held an automatic in his other hand, firing toward the reader, apparently at attackers arrayed beyond the bounds of the issue's cover dimensions. Where does the top hat come? The mystery men got big, you know. Guys in masks and guns, mad geniuses taking over the Potomac, invasions. His head tilted to the side as he followed his thoughts. You know, right before the war, the mystery men got very popular. Lots of paranoia boosted sales. Then the soldiers went across the ocean, and news started coming out about how awful Berlin really was. The mystery men and their master villains couldn't compete with the real news on the radio. He shrugged. Sales plummeted. My father was at loose ends. He asked me for advice. My father, he asked me for advice about his business. This is a man at loose ends. He's reached the end of a map and doesn't know where the road goes. So I say, okay, let's try this funny book business. Keep the presses rolling. My employee's busy. He says, okay. We start this new business. The old business dries up. My father, Mr. Grimson, finally says, I don't know this business. And he hands it over to me. Our boys come home from Berlin. They want something different. Everybody wants something different. Crime movies and the radio shows start up with different kinds of stories. So that's what I do with the funny books. He shrugged again, sat down at his book-covered table. Sales are good again. His ink-smudged hands lay on the open pages of the dog and cat book. The detective nodded. But aren't you creating a lot of friction with these crime books? The newspapers, the police? Grimson made a lazy gesture with his hand. Oh, everybody. The school boards, the teachers, the mommies and daddies. My innocent darling is brainwashed by your shoddy stories. Okay, let's say a little truth there. One, nobody is innocent. The little darlings are born bad just like their mommies and daddies. And who are blind to the badness in their little darlings. Okay. Thank you.
Just so you know.
Two, if the kids were really so innocent, if their mommies and daddies were so innocent, and they're teaching their kids, my shoddy stories wouldn't be brainwashing them. They surely wouldn't be brainwashed to go set fire to schools and rob stores. Three, my stories aren't so shoddy. I hire the best artists, good writers. Maybe the stories aren't pretty. Bad guys get their just desserts at the end. Real people do wicked things in real life, and that's what you'll see in my stories. Mommies and daddies just aren't used to seeing real life drawn up in a funny book. Maybe funny book isn't the right words to use. Maybe. And maybe the readers should be older, not little kids. I got no issue with that. But there isn't another distribution stream right now that would be more appropriate, I guess. The newsstand guys can sell what he wants and who he wants to. So you're just going to keep on making and selling these books. Why not? People buy them. Just ask Maury Cortland, my business manager. My business is to stay in business. To do that, I provide something people are willing to pay for. Sales tell me plenty of people are willing to pay for what I make, no matter what the headlines and teachers say. Saying these words, Grimson had gotten a bit red in the face. The detective reached out a hand. May I? Grimson handed him his titles to his guest. Crackling Crime Story, comics. The detective leafed through the pages. So, who is your nearest competitor? Ha! No one! Grimson clapped his hands. No other company wants to get in this hot water. Don't get me wrong, he said as he waved his hand before his face. Some folks have tried, always the second string guys, the ones who follow trends but don't set them. The art not so good, the story's really scandalous, and no redeeming qualities. Bad guys killing people, hibbledy-pibbledy, and no justice in the end. Evil run 'em up, shocking stuff. But the quality isn't there. Sales may spike at first. Hey, the readers say, here's something new. But then they see what they're buying, they compare that junk to the fine stuff I'm selling, and they drop it. And the also-ran publishers drop the books and move on or out of business. Grimson had grown more animated as he talked about his rivals. The detective picked up another magazine, one of the funny animal books from a different publisher. So, no talking bunnies or mice for you? Bunnies, mice, rats! Grimson was shouting now, his face red, his glasses steamed so that his eyes were obscured. He waved his arms above his head. Everybody has a plan, and mine is always the bad one. He clutched a rolled-up comic in each fist. Who cares about talking mice? A mouse runs out of my baseboard, says to me, you want some cheese? I'm throwing a shoe at it. He shot to his feet. The table overturned and a wave of colored paper surged toward the detective.
There's nothing wrong with my plan. This is my company. You feel those presses rolling under your feet everywhere you go in this building? That rolling energy of words and ink powering along under your toes? That's my plan. That's my business. Grimson had advanced so that the detective had backed out of the doorless entry into the hallway. A bald man in glasses and a nice suit and tie stood farther along the passage, one foot slightly raised as though he wasn't sure whether to advance or turn and run. Hazel, the not secretary, was at the other end, where she had escorted the detective in to see her boss. A look of surprise mixed with worry worked across her features. That's my business, Grimson asserted again. He stalked into the hall, and the detective stepped toward Hazel in the entry, still facing the raging publisher. You tell him, Maury! The bald man in the suit nodded. He remained in place, but still appeared ready to run away. You think you can do better than that? Prove it, spaceman! I think he's forgotten her name. Mr. Grimson, I'm not sure. I told you Mr. Grimson is my father. I'm the boss here. You don't like it? Beat it! Grimson swung the rolled comics as if he were swatting a horde of attacking mosquitoes. The detective turned, nodded a farewell to Hazel. Sorry to have caused a rumpus. He started toward the front door of the office. I'm sorry, Mr. Space Detective, she said. I just don't know what's happening. Out in the street, the detective let out a sigh. Woo! Guess that ruins our chances for a Space Detective comic from Grimson's presses. Oh yeah, that's too bad. Yeah, I bet Hazel could have fixed this up with some real excitement. Not like our real lives. Yeah, watch out, I might start to weep. So that's that. Questions? Comments? Vegetables? Well, thank you.
Good.
It's fun, it's enjoyable, and like I said, that one, the last one, I hope is out and about in the coming year. Yes, sir, Greg.
How much research do you have to do before, because you set them in the pat even further back than most?
You know, I read a lot of history, and now like I read a lot of Western history, and I'm really interested in the Gold Rush era and the Yukon and stuff. So a lot of that I know, but there are some things I did some research. In fact, in Fight Card, the Fighting Alaska book, there's a list of references, resources I used that for people who are interested in real world things, how it's tied to it, you can look up. I read a lot about Wyatt Earp, several biographies, the fighting and the stuff, certainly the boxing history. And it was really frowned upon across the country by the legal authorities, but there were a lot of fights that went on, like I said, promoted as scientific expeditions. And they usually had somebody from the police department or the local authorities representing whatever in those fights so they could make them happen. So a lot of that's real. But it's just over years of reading about this stuff, and then I like Westerns, and I like those periods, and writing about them. So it's kind of, but it, you know, we were talking earlier, it's like, I envy those writers who like, you know, I really like horror, and I'm going to focus all my efforts on writing horror. And Jim and I are like, you know, we read everything, and we want to write this, we write that. Every genre we're encountered was like, if only I was more focused. But I'm like, you know, somebody like Robert E. Howard, Farmer, they wrote in genres, but they were sort of all over the place. And really, what their readers today really like about them is that they had so much variety. So I take solace in that, I guess. But because I think I would burn out on something if I wrote just in one genre all the time. John?
Duane, you said you're kind of slow as a writer. I totally get it. How many hours do you put in a given week?
Lately?
Yeah.
None. Like I said, there's 36 hours in every day, and you try to squeeze 4 in each week to do some writing. But like when I get something going, like once I get some of these things that are taking up all my attention right now, sort of settled and dust settled, I'll spend at least an hour every day once I get rolling, like the Space Detective thing, or I've got two things I want to finish by the end of the year: Space Detective, and then I have an ebook about a masked Mexican wrestler called El Tigre Azul. And I'm writing a sequel. It started, and I'd like to have that finished by the end too. But once I get those, once I'm in the zone, I'll do an hour or two per night, every night. And so about like that. I haven't had that. I haven't been able to do that recently, so I'm kind of backed up. I got to set it out. But and the El Tigre, I don't know if anybody's read the Three Witches, but that's the masked Mexican wrestler story. It's the first of a trilogy. The second one's the one I'm working on now. Two monsters, and the third one's what we call One Horror. But it's set sort of in the mid-'70s, and if you ever watched any of those late night Mexican movies about masked Mexican wrestlers, El Santo, and some of the others, and they fight the Aztec mummy and the whatever vampires and blah blah blah. It kind of takes its vibe from that, plus that sort of the indie filmmaking boom that was going on in the late 60s, early 70s. It's just kind of, you watch something, some of those movies, Monty Hellman and whatever, and you're like, there's expectations you have from watching Hollywood movies. Those guys started making these independent films, and you didn't know what was going to happen next. And so that's kind of the vibe I'm plugging into as writing writing that story. Yes, sir, Ron.
Wait, I just came in a little late. I want to ask you if you're doing, Q&A, and we're friends.
Uh-oh, what's coming?
I hope I'm not respreading something somebody's already asked, all right?
Oh, that's okay.
I apologize. But I'm just kind of curious myself. Right off the bat, one name. Who's your favorite writer?
My favorite writer on any, you ask, you could
Okay,
ask before lunch and
anyway,
after
you're
lunch,
just-
it'd be different answers.
One name, your favorite writer.
You know who? It's not even a pulp writer.
Okay.
Is Jerome Sharon, and he writes crime novels that are really infused with Jewish folkloric history. They don't read like your typical crime novels. He grew up in the Bronx. His brother was a detective, was a cop in New York, and you read those, and there's this. He actually is very inspired by Isaac Babel, the Russian Jewish writer. And there's this whole sense of this sort of, the way of telling, the way, there's this oral tradition, Jewish folklore, and there's this sort of exaggeration and compression at the same time in his storytelling. And that, he really, if I read that, I'm like, it's just like eating dessert. Skipping dinner and eating dessert. The other guy is Barry Hannah. He's not a crime writer either. He was from Mississippi, and he is like completely over the top. If they were publishing The Spider now, except that Barry Hannah did, Barry Hannah would have been The Spider's right. He's just, it's all these sort of gothic, southern oddballs, and there's these brilliant burst of violence out of nowhere, and it's and the way things he does with language are just wow. It's like eating Pop Rocks and skipping dinner, and skipping dessert. 2 whole minutes. All right. Anything else?
Hey, what about your new novel, Airship Hunters?
That's so old. That's so old. That's so last century.
I hear it's good.
I hear it's good too.
I heard
This
that
is
somebody
Jim
had to
Beard.
loan you a copy.
Yes, somebody had to loan me a copy because
All right, get off.
I'm not into this promotion thing at all. I gotta figure
Get
this
off
marketing
the
thing
stage,
out.
you belong.
That's it.
Do you have a day job?
Do I have a day job? Yes, I do. I'm on my 3rd career change. I
Don't
am.
quit the day job.
Yeah, the day job quit me, so I'm on my 3rd career change. I started out in newspapers, and they're kind of going down the toilet, if anybody noticed.
Yeah.
But then I worked on as a
contract with CMS, the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, a federal agency, working in healthcare and improving the quality of healthcare provided by hospitals, nursing homes, and physician practices. Well, that recently changed. So now actually I'm selling life insurance and health insurance.
Oh, good. I should
And
thank you.
I am not a salesperson. Obviously, I didn't bring my own bloody book. But I like to do things. The work I do best at is when I help people, and there's things I can do that helps people hold on to what they've worked hard to earn and stuff. And that really gives me great satisfaction. So, and then somewhere in a week, in those 4 hours, I'm going to start movie writing as well. So that's my day. Anything else? John?
Can I have my damn book back?
No. I'm going to move your bookmark too. Thanks, everybody.
Let's have a hand for Duane. All right. Next we have the Heirs of Weird Tales. It's Ron Fortier of Airship 27 will be moderated.